welcome back to Sweet Magnolias. My name is Emily and this is my channel to share homemaking and lifestyle type videos. I'm a wife of 3 years to my childhood sweetheart, and in a few weeks I'm going to be a mama to a little boy. So if that sounds interesting to you, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Today's video we are going to be doing another bake with me. This is actually week 2 of Victoria Yost on YouTube. Her channel is Time and Tenderness. She started this challenge at the beginning of November. It's called Bake-Ful November. So every week a bunch of us homemakers are collaborating together to each share our own recipe for a different baked good every week in November. So this week is actually bread week, and I actually had to make some bread anyway today because I do a little bit of baking on the side as a side hustle, and I needed to make a bread order for today anyway. But we're also going to make some bread for us to keep for breakfast this week. I'm going to be doing 2 different bread recipes, banana nut bread and pumpkin bread. And both of these recipes were given to me by my mother. So we're going to go ahead and do that. But if you haven't already, make sure that you check out Victoria Yost's channel and her Instagram. And if you want to join in on the challenge, just make sure to tag her in your posts for this Bake-Ful November challenge. So let's go ahead and get started baking because it is like 2 o'clock and I have a lot of baking to do. So let's go ahead and get started. This cookbook was actually gifted to me by my mom when I first got married. She put a bunch of her own recipes in here. So this is where I'm getting the recipe for the pumpkin bread and also for the banana bread, but I'll try to list all the recipes down in the description box below in case you want to make this for yourself. So I will leave the full recipes down below in the description box for you to follow. But basically for the banana bread, you're going to go ahead and start out by creaming your butter, sugar, and eggs together first. This recipe takes 2 sticks of butter or margarine, depending on what you want to use. 3 cups of sugar. I use white sugar. And it also takes 4 eggs. And I should mention that both of these recipes for both of these breads will make 3 loaves of bread each. The KitchenAid mixer really makes this process so much simpler. So if you have a mixer, definitely break it out for these recipes because it makes mixing things very much easier. But I'm just going to cream all those together until it gets to a consistency that I need. Next, I'm going to add the bananas, and I actually have a neat little hack for you guys. Instead of putting your bananas in a bowl and trying to mash them up, I go ahead and mash them with my hands while they're in the peel. This will kind of smush them up, and then it'll split the peel and you can just scoop it out with the spoon. And here again is a way that the mixer is very helpful because you don't have to worry about banana lumps. Basically now you just add all of the other ingredients. If I miss something, like I said, I will leave it down below. But you add 2 teaspoons of vanilla, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and 2 teaspoons of baking powder. But I actually only have baking powder, so I used 3 teaspoons of that, and it always works fine for me. So that is what I'm using there. The recipe calls for 4 cups of flour. I'm just using all-purpose flour, but you could definitely use whole wheat flour, or you could probably use even coconut flour. But I buy the all-purpose because I do this baking quite frequently, and it's the cheapest thing that I can buy. I'm not sure how I missed this, but I really should have added the milk before adding the flour because it gave the mixer a little bit of a hard time trying to mix when it got thick. But the amount of milk you're going to need is 2/3 of a cup plus 2 teaspoons of milk. And I'm using 2%, but like I mentioned, you can use whole milk, 1%, 2%, whatever you like. You're also going to add 2 teaspoons of lemon juice. And I believe this is just so that your bananas don't really get brown prematurely, but I just add 2 teaspoons and it works great. The nuts that I use are just chopped walnuts that I buy at Walmart. And I don't really measure this, I just kind of eyeball it to the amount of nuts that I want into the bread, but you can measure this out if you want to. Basically, you just eyeball it. So you want to spray your loaf pans. I'm just using like a regular size loaf pan for all 3. These were actually non-stick pans, but I have trouble with it sticking, so I spray it anyway. But you're going to fill it up with equal amounts, and you're going to bake these at 350 for 1 hour. It's actually the same for both the banana bread and the pumpkin bread. They cook at 350 for 1 hour. To the pumpkin bread, I like to start with the wet ingredients first. So you're going to add 1 can of pumpkin, 2/3 a cup of water, 1 cup of oil. I used vegetable oil, but you can use any kind of oil that you want, and 3 eggs. So I add all this into the bowl and then I put it under the mixer and mix that up first before adding any other ingredients. Next, you're going to start on your dry ingredients. I usually like to add the smaller ingredients first and the flour last. So you're going to do 2 teaspoons of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of baking powder. There again, I just used the baking powder. You're going to need 1 to 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. You're really supposed to do 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of cloves, and 1 teaspoon of nutmeg. But I actually don't have cloves, so I do 2 teaspoons of cinnamon and 1 teaspoon of the nutmeg. You're also going to need 1.5 teaspoons of salt. Once I have that blended, then I go ahead and add the sugar. This pumpkin bread recipe calls for 3 cups of sugar, and again, I'm just using white sugar. Once I have all those things blended, then I like to add the flour last. This recipe calls for 3.5 cups of sifted flour. I actually don't sift mine because of the mixer, because the mixer does a really good job of combining everything without lumps. But if you don't have a mixer, then you may want to consider sifting your flour first. As you can see, I kept running out of flour because I've been baking a lot. But I am going to go ahead and add my flour and mix that up. And it's totally optional, but you can add nuts to this recipe as well. I do not, just because I want it to be more of like a cake-like texture and not so similar to the banana nut bread, but you can totally add chopped walnuts or chopped pecans to the pumpkin bread. These are my finished banana nut loaves. I apologize that I don't have a shot of the pumpkin bread, but the pumpkin bread had to cook for another hour after this, and it got really late and really dark. But I did insert a clip of me eating some of the pumpkin bread just to show you guys that I did actually cook it and that it was very tasty. So I hope you enjoy these recipes. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed this bake with me video. Like I said, make sure you check out Victoria's challenge. I'll leave all of the links down below, and I'll also leave the full recipes for both of these breads down below. Make sure that you're subscribed if you haven't already, and make sure that you like this video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.